Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to be with you here on this Monday, December 1st. We're broadcasting as we always do from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at KSC. Hope you all had a wonderful, safe, and fulfilling Thanksgiving holiday for those of you who celebrated it, and that you've made your way back home safely and don't still have some travel planned ahead for Monday, and you're all back at home nice and settled and getting ready with us for the launch of a Falcon 9 rocket to kick off the month of December. Currently, T minus 58 minutes, 50 seconds, and counting to the current T0 liftoff time for tonight's Falcon 9 flight. Looking at a departure time as things currently stand of 2:44 a.m. Eastern, 0744 UTC for those of you joining around the world. You may have seen some lightning pop off behind the pad just a moment or two ago, but rest assured that lightning is pretty far offshore and should not interfere with this morning's launch opportunity. That said, unfortunately, the 45th Weather Squadron did not publish a launch weather forecast for this mission, so we don't have the type of keen insight into the weather particulars of this mission. But I'll tell you what does bring us some good insight is our wonderful team here at Spaceflight Now, who's making this live launch opportunity possible. Our editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of today's broadcast, and our photographers are standing by to capture the Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its ascent from Pad 39A. You can follow the fellows at their handles on X. John is at John Pisani Photo, Adam at A Burn NYC, and Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr. Also, if you're not already following Spaceflight Now, you can follow us on X as well as Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook. We'll also be joined a little bit later in the broadcast coverage by our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C and J Images, as well as Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions. Certainly appreciate the more than 400 of you who are watching along with us live as we're getting things rolling here in these overnight hours. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage tonight. Also want to thank our moderators who are helping us out in the live chat here today. So we've got Aussie Space Girl on tap, and given the hour, we've also got Astro Joe with us as well. Appreciate the both of you. And if you do see any of the other mods cruise on in throughout the course of the coverage, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can help make the mods' job that much easier just by following the rules of the chat. We ask that you post your message in English so that our mods can respond as appropriate. Also, that you hold off from delving into overt politics or religion. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't post a huge block of them so it takes up a large percentage of the live chat. And last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated with, and we'll all get along swimmingly. We're also joined this evening by one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, who's able to help answer folks' questions in the chat. Speaking of channel members, this and every other live launch opportunity is made possible in no small part thanks to our wonderful ongoing support from this channel member community here on YouTube. So big thanks to folks like Sherry7116, Chris Shin. Let's see who else we've got tonight. Clayton Clemens. Hello to you. Sulfur for lunch. Lots of wonderful members here, albeit a number of them may be asleep given the odd hour tonight, coming right after a holiday weekend. But we certainly appreciate those of you who are with us now, and we'll catch it at more sensible hours later. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to our member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch lift-off moments from here in Florida in 4K. Want to welcome in new channel members Richard W. 2566 joining us with membership at the mission specialist level, and Yona Adahi 894 checking in at the path leader level. Welcome aboard to the both of you. We're glad to have you with us. And a big thanks to DB RG2DK for being a member with us at the path leader level for 4 months and counting. Who says, good evening, all. Last but not least, if you have a comment or question about this mission or just want to offer a little support for the coverage like just Cherry did, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will he be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. Time on T minus 52 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Thanks to Just Cherry for the $5 super chat, who says, thank you for all you do. Thank you, Sherry, for supporting our coverage. And a big thank you to channel member Christian658 with a very generous $50 super chat. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate the support at that level. You may have noticed a notable amount of venting happening from the strong back at this point in the count. It's not atypical to see venting from the strong back from pad 39A in the run up to the start of fueling. It's a little bit more venting than we might typically see, but that's not to say that there's anything particularly worth noting here as far as a possible issue, but just worth pointing out things that are slightly different than we typically see. So just putting a pin in that. We'll come back to it if it becomes relevant. Of course, today is December 1st, which means SpaceX is preparing for a double launch day from both coasts. A flight from Vandenberg is on tap for later on today. We'll, of course, have live coverage dedicated for that, starting about 30 minutes prior to liftoff. For some Cape context here, taking a look at where things currently stand. Prior to this launch here, coming up in about 15 minutes. There have been 101 launches from Florida so far in 2025 between the Kennedy Space Center and over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Looking for launch number 102 here in just shy of 50 minutes. With about 10 minutes or so remaining before the SpaceX launch director makes their call on the start of prop load here today, let's take a look at the countdown timeline, see what events SpaceX will need to accomplish on their way to launching this Falcon 9 rocket. Of course, beginning at that waypoint where they made the call that they are ready to proceed, fueling of the Falcon 9 will begin at the T minus 35-minute mark with the loading of RP1, which is a rocket grade kerosene, on board the rocket's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen will begin flowing on board the rocket's booster. Half an hour before takeoff, SpaceX will start to load a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. It will do the same regarding the second stage. A few minutes after that, helium, of course, is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes, second stage RP1 loading wraps up. And at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down begins. This is SpaceX thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. We see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent, which will begin here at pad 39A at about T minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. That vent lasts roughly 4 minutes in duration, setting up for second stage LOXO to begin at the 16-minute mark. 7 minutes before takeoff is the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that helps to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strong back. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stays in that position up to liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of that Falcon 9. 3 minutes before departure, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute afterwards. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, we'll hear the call that the Falcon 9 is entered into its automated startup sequence. That means that control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. At the same time, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will then give their confirmation that they are go for launch 45 seconds before takeoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting 2:44 a.m. Eastern, 07:44 UTC, or just shy of 46 minutes from now. Time now, T minus 44 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. With this mission, SpaceX will fly using the Falcon 9 first stage booster with a tail number B1095 in the SpaceX fleet. Not quite enough flights for this booster to move the needle on the frequent flyers pack. This will be just the fourth flight of B1095. Here's a quick look at where the most flown boosters from SpaceX currently stand. Of course, just saw them fly B1071, making the second booster for the company to hit the 30 flight milestone as SpaceX works its way up to certifying its boosters for, at this point in time, up to 40 flights apiece. As of the most recent launch for SpaceX, they have launched successfully 152 times with their Falcon 9 rockets so far this year. Looking for flight number 153 with this mission, and later on today with the Starlink 15-10 flight, that will be number 154 out from Vandenberg. For those interested in learning all about the future orbital flights that are coming up around the corner, especially if and when the T0 for those missions change or if they happen to shift launch dates, you can head on over to spaceflightnow.com. Just click on the launch schedule tab, and that'll show you all of the missions that are up and coming from both here in the United States and elsewhere around the world. In between the launches of the Starlink 6-86 mission and the Starlink 15-10 flight, which is currently scheduled for no earlier than 6:52 p.m. Pacific, 02:52 UTC. Arianespace is set to launch the latest Vega C rocket. This will be the sixth flight of a Vega C rocket, launching the ComSat 7 mission for South Korea. Set to head into a sun-synchronous orbit, departing at 2:21 p.m. local time from Europe's spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana. That's 12:21 p.m. Eastern or 17:21 UTC for those around the world. Other notable non-Falcon 9 launches coming up in the not too distant future. You've got a flight from down in New Zealand, Electron launching the first dedicated mission for JAXA, the Raise and Shine mission. Set to depart at about 4 p.m. local time on December 5th, 0300 UTC or 10 p.m. Eastern. Also got a launch from Japan that's coming up right after that on the 7th local time in Japan, 9:30 p.m. Eastern on the 6th. And then a little bit later this month on the 15th, The first flight for Amazon since they changed the name of their low Earth orbit broadband internet constellation, no longer Project Kuiper, now known as Amazon Leo. The now newly named Amazon Leo 4 mission set to depart again on December 15th aboard an Atlas V rocket from the United Launch Alliance. Just under 39 minutes to go. Coming up in about a minute or so is when SpaceX should make the call on whether or not they are ready to proceed into the start of prop load. As we await confirmation of the start of fueling, I want to thank RPM for years for being a member with us. Now 13 months and counting at the mission specialist level. Thank you, RPM. It says, watching from California. Can't wait for tomorrow's launch from Vandenberg. Also want to thank West Swell 2757 for a $5 super chat. Tipping for the refreshments fund. Yes, here at Spaceflight Now, we are powered by our own rocket fuel, a healthy combination of various teas and a caffeine drink of the preference of our various crew members. Not going to name drop any brands here since up to this point we don't have any sponsor deals with any of those, but that's okay. 37 minutes to go here. Coming up in just about 2 minutes is when, if the go ahead was in fact granted, fueling of this Falcon 9 rocket set to begin. Those of you who are keenly listening may have heard a bit of a whoosh noise just a moment or two ago. To understanding that those were the tanks pressurizing for the start of prop load here in, or venting, excuse me, as SpaceX prepares for the start of prop load. So a good auditory cue that the go ahead was granted and tanking should be starting in 30 seconds. While the sound of venting is all well and good, we'll be watching for the visual cues that fueling is in fact underway as well. Always helps to have that extra level of comfort knowing that we've made the right call and that SpaceX is in fact tanking the Falcon 9 rocket. What we're going to be watching for is signs of a frost line beginning to form on the booster as the super cold densified liquid oxygen starts to flow on board. As far as where we are looking, if you see the blue lettering of SpaceX on the vehicle, just beneath the X in SpaceX, you can see where the white of the rocket shifts to a slightly grayer gradient. It's right about that point that we'll start to see the frost line form, but as you may also have noticed, a little bit of vapor near the base of the strong back, a good indication that we should be seeing that frost line form here in the next minute or so. And we are, in fact, starting to see that frost line beginning to form, a little bit of vapor trailing off as well, just to the right of the strong back structure here. Between the noise of the vent and the visuals of the frost, we are confident in stating that SpaceX is, in fact, fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, which means they are locking into their current T0 of 2:44 a.m. Eastern, 0744 UTC. For those of you who may just be joining us now, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 6-86 mission, flight of 29 B2 mini optimized satellites into low Earth orbit aboard this Falcon 9 rocket, set to depart from Launch Complex 39A and fly on a southeasterly trajectory. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing this stream to allow some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage here today. Mention briefly some of the offshore weather that we've been seeing. You could see some of those offshore storms and the distance that they are away from the launch pad here on Florida's Space Coast. So, well enough away that they should not interfere with the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket as it makes a southeasterly turn from the Space Coast. Speaking of trajectory, let's go ahead and uh, paint a more vivid picture by bringing up the trajectory graphics we've got prepared for you here. This is a Google Earth overview of Launch Complex 39A. As mentioned, the rocket will fly a southeasterly path upon departing from the Atlantic coast. A couple minutes into the mission, the first and second stages will separate, and the booster B-1095 will target an autonomous landing on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions, positioned out in the Atlantic. If all goes well with this booster recovery, this would be the 144th good landing on this particular drone ship and the 541st overall booster landing for SpaceX. As mentioned, the company wants to recover the boosters on the path to certifying them for up to 40 flights apiece. Same is true with the payload fairings, which will be jettisoned and recovered just a little bit further downrange from where the booster is set to land on that drone ship. Once down in the water, they'll be brought aboard one of SpaceX's recovery vessels, then brought back through to Port Canaveral, where they will be offloaded, then off to the Hangar X site here at KSC, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Just under 25 minutes remaining. As I mentioned a moment or two ago, the booster flying this mission is making its fourth trip to space and back, so not much of a booster history to speak of just yet. So this will take just a moment or two of your time to fly through where this booster has been before we see its fourth flight. In fact, all the missions that this booster has accomplished so far have all been in service of SpaceX's Starlink program. Here are the booster turnaround times for those missions. Looking at its fastest trip back to the pad at 46 days. This launch coming up here in just under 24 minutes. And in under 4 minutes, we'll see the start of the so-called big vent as SpaceX prepares to load liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. And there's the start of the big vent right on time. Again, this vent will last 4 minutes in duration to set the stage for upper stage liquid oxygen load to begin. And there's the end of the big vent. Second stage LOX load is set to begin now in about 20 seconds. Time now T minus 15 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. Talking about the payload that's on board today's Falcon 9 rocket, looking at 29 Starlink satellites heading into low Earth orbit. This is SpaceX's 111th launch of the year featuring these broadband satellites. The V2 Mini optimized versions are considerably lighter than the previously flown versions of the V2. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. Built up in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle, these particular satellites will be deployed at about 168 miles or 271 kilometers in altitude at about a 43 degrees inclination. Time now T minus 12 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. With this flight tonight, this will be SpaceX's 570th launch of a Falcon 9 rocket to date and the 153rd of the year so far. Let's talk a little bit more about SpaceX's workhorse orbital launch vehicle, the Falcon 9 rocket. Stands at 70 meters or 229 feet in height. This rocket has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that, of course, is made up by the rocket's first stage. Booster flight to date be 1095, making its fourth trip to space and back. At the base of the rocket are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, called Just Read the Instructions. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the black or See the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere. Tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are three mechanical latches that attach to the rocket's second stage. And at first stage, main engine cutoff, high pressure helium is used to release those latches, and four pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until the point of stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Like with the first stage, the MVAC engine also burns that same prop mix of RP1 and LOX. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be one final burn of this engine, a deorbit burn, driving it back into the atmosphere where it's designed to burn up and help to eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, currently encapsulating the 29 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand at 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two fairing halves will be recovered further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Following their jettison, they'll splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Just about 9 minutes to go now. In roughly 2 minutes, that'll be the start of the engine chill for the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster. T minus 7 minutes and counting. Start of the engine chill. SpaceX, at this point, flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps of those 9 Merlin engines. T minus 6 minutes and counting. At this point, the first stage RP1 tank should now be full. We should also be getting high level views of the Falcon 9 rocket along with mission audio beginning in less than 1 minute. As we await the start of those pad level views, I want to thank channel member Butterfly for being a member with us now for nearly 2 years. Clocking in at 23 months now. He says, thanks for almost 2 years of launches. Glad to have you along with us, Butterfly.
9 tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
And as you just heard and will see momentarily, there we go. Got those pad level views ready for you, courtesy of SpaceX. The call you heard a moment ago, the preparations for the retraction of the strong back, the large truss structure next to the Falcon 9 rocket, set to begin
Strong back retract has started.
right now. In about 15 seconds or so, we should start to see those clamp arms beneath the payload fairings open up. And then the strong back, otherwise referred to as the transporter erector, will recline away from the Falcon 9 rocket just a few degrees, and it'll stay in that position up to liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion. There go the arms. T minus 3 minutes and counting.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
With that confirmation of stage 1 LOX load wrapping up, we should hear a similar call regarding the second stage LOX tank at around the 2 minute mark. T minus 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Venting you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts, as SpaceX releases the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad.
Ground gas closeouts.
Now coming up to the final minute of the count, then the Falcon 9 will enter into its automated startup sequence.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And at this point, we're just waiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are, in fact, go for launch.
LD, go for launch.
Good words there. Less than 40 seconds remaining before the flight of this Falcon 9. 30 seconds and counting. $15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-86 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the towers.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal. Power telemetry nominal.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
Now a little more than a minute into flight. Vehicle passing max
Max Q.
One of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Throttling back upon those 9 Merlin engines. Coming up to the MVAC chill sequence when SpaceX thermally conditions the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage.
Stage 2 engine chill.
Good call there for that event. We're coming up to a few events in fairly rapid succession now. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff for MECO at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. Payload fairings will jettison at about the 3-minute mark in flight.
Nominal trajectory.
Coming up to MECO here. And there you see MECO. Stage separation.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2 startup.
Good callouts, good visuals from the SpaceX onboard cameras. Coming up next will be fairing jettison in about 5 or so seconds. There go the fairings.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Good visual of the Starlink satellites as well, all 29 of them. Those 2 fairing halves will make their way towards a splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean, a little bit further downrange from where the booster is going to be targeting a touchdown on the drone ship. Speaking of that booster, now passing 100 kilometers in altitude, about 3.5 minutes into the mission. Coming up next will be the start of the 3-engine entry burn as that booster, B1095, hits the brakes. This begins to make its way towards the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. Four minutes into flight. Booster B-1095 reaching its apogee in today's mission, topping out at 113 kilometers in altitude. As you can see from the telemetry data on the right-hand side of your screen, it's now starting to make its way down towards the drone ship. As we approach 5 minutes into this mission, with about a minute to go before the start of that 3-engine entry burn.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Flight termination system has been
Stage 1 entry
saved.
burn startup.
Entry burn now underway. And we've got a good visual on that with our tracking cameras. Well done. Here's the end of the burn in real time.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And from the onboard cameras.
Stage 2 FTS is safed.
Both vehicles continue to follow a nominal trajectory.
Good confirmation of good trajectories for both the upper and lower stages of the rocket. 7 minutes into this mission so far, we're coming up to the landing burn here in less than a minute.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good touchdown for B-1095.
Stage 2 shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Good confirmation of engine shutdown and a nominal orbit insertion. Coming up next, the booster, following a long coast phase, will perform a roughly 2-second burn on that upper stage engine, beginning at about T plus 56 minutes and 48 seconds. That'll set the stage for the Starlink satellites to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 55 seconds post liftoff. Of course, being that this is what has become a fairly routine Starlink launch for SpaceX. The company no longer shows the deployment of their Starlink satellites live. So instead, we shall turn to our mission stats as they currently stand. Let you know where this launch is placed within the larger context of SpaceX launches and the industry at large. This was, as we mentioned, the fourth flight of the booster B-1095. This was SpaceX's 570th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 153rd of the year so far. This was the 505th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is the company's 166th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 123rd orbital flight for SpaceX from Pad 39A, and the 218th overall launch from this historic launch site. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 144th good landing on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. It marked the 443rd SpaceX drone ship landing, the 541st SpaceX booster landing, and tacking on the booster landing from Blue Origin, the 542nd overall landing. Moving on to some industry stats. This was the 102nd orbital launch from Florida this year, the 162nd orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 177th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 280th orbital launch attempt around the world. There have been 6 orbital mishaps so far this year. Here is a look at the CAPE launches year by year. Now with launch number 102 in the books. And here's a look at the pie chart of where things stand with the U.S. compared to other orbital launch countries around the world. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, later today, we've got another Starlink mission from down at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. And in between this launch and that, Arianespace is looking to fly their latest Vega C rocket with a mission for South Korea. You can always head over to our website, spaceflightnow.com, to keep tabs on orbital launches as they come up in the future, or click on the little text that says launch log to see missions that have come before. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our coverage of the Starlink 6-86 mission. I want to thank our moderators in the live chat who have been helping us out today. Thanks to Aussie Space Girl and to Astro Joe for holding it down in the chat. Also, thanks to Cumulus Granatus for helping to answer folks' questions as well. Big thanks to our photographers, Adam and John, as well as our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. Thanks as well to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, who's been running the technical operations of the broadcast here today. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. We certainly appreciate your time and attention and look forward to welcoming you back when next we have a launch to cover. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. Until then, bye-bye.